Warning, mention of child endangerment. I hadn't laughed so hard in my life until now. This kid probably has more guts than a whole army. I looked over to see Kirishima, who was slightly giggling as well. The boy looked up at us confused. How is that funny? He tilted his head. I love it when people fight back. I love it when people have both a bite and a bark. I bent down to face the boy. So, why don't you stay here? I like you way too much to let you leave. His eyes shot wide, but not out of fear, but something else. Kirishima, order a room next to mine for him. Kirishima nodded. Yes. He smiled and then left the room. But why? The little boy suddenly spoke as he tilted his head to the side. The same questions were starting to piss me off. I pointed upwards. Many people don't dare to speak to my guards. I raised another finger, talked to me so casually, then another. I see something within you. See, I only wanted to use this boy, but I see myself in him. Only a little. You are to help me, all right? And I am to help you. My hand held Utter's chin, his mouth slightly open and then closed. His head nodded. Now, I stood and clasped my hands. This will be hard. You will be educated every day, learn to sword fight, learn things about politics and more. He stood up, following me as I made it to the door. I will get all of that planned out. I looked back to see him hugging me tightly, tears falling from his cheeks. Ugh, this is the part I hate about kids. His head resting on me. Thank you, Mommy. I froze. Don't. I cut myself off. I unclasped my hands and took a breath and picked him up. Yes, I'm Mommy now. I combed through his hair as his head rested on my shoulder. I left my room, walking around and showing him the palace. Now, what's your name, little guy? I looked to him, and he wiped his tears. Nothing. Oh, God. Rumors spread like rapid fire that the queen took in a poor boy with no family, no title, nothing to him, even going as far as to raise him like her own. But no one would protest. Why? Well, their heads would be long gone from their bodies. Rowan, I spoke as I stopped his hands from getting any more sweets. No more. You must eat something else. I spoke as he puffed out his cheeks. Then why are they there? He asked. I sighed. They bring them out thinking I'll like them. I picked one out from the rest. Sweets are what nobles tend to feed their kids so they grow weak, soft, and pitiful. I placed the cookie down. He looked disappointed and sad in himself. And for you, I pointed at him. My finger pointed right to where his heart would be. You would be fed fruits and low meat. He looked down, looking more ashamed of himself. Is that bad? He then looked up. No, not at all. If you are given enough, you'll end up looking like Kirishima. His eyes sparkled, then looked at Kirishima, who held a wide, cheery grin. He then looked back to me. I get to be as cool like Daddy? He smiled. I don't know why, but he seems to call him like that, even when told not to. Also, since he had no knowledge of his name, I named him. I couldn't resist. Just calling him nothing or boy seemed way too cruel, even for a tyrant like me. He began to eat everything on his plate. He then paused. Wait, then what does Daddy eat? He then pushed a spoonful into his mouth. Souls. Rowan then looked back at him. Souls? He tilted his head. What's that? He took another bite. Is it meat? He wondered to himself. Yes, it's rare though, Kirishima, pointed out. Can I have some? Rowan asked with a sweet and innocent smile. I slightly giggled. I will tell you now, it's not that easy to come by. He frowned. Rowan. He then looked back at Kirishima. I promise you one day I'll bring you some. He spoke with a smile, and Rowan's attitude had quickly changed. He nodded and continued to eat. Well, fastly, of course. He seemed way too hungry for someone this small. The door to the dining room then opened. Sorry to intrude. An advisor paused. But someone from the Tang Kingdom is here to speak with you. Ugh, I groaned. Rowan, come on. We have a lesson. He quickly wiped his mouth and followed after me, Kirishima following him. We made it to a room that was usually for meetings. Hello, Your Majesty, bowed a male who stood beside the king and princess. My, it would have been great if someone had told me in advance, because that is their job. I eyed the same male who had entered our dining room without any knock or anything. Don't blame the poor man. It is my fault. He, the Tang King, smiled. He then eyed Rowan, who was clinging onto my dress like the first day I took him in. And who might this be? He tilted his head. My son. I smiled, holding the back of his head, ushering him to stand in front of me. I could tell that Tang was angry. Good. Once I'm done with this so-called king, I'm going to kill this fucking brat. String Tang up and fucking show those little shits. I see. I never knew you were that kind. He narrowed his eyes at me. I'm not. I held Rowan's shoulders tightly. I plan on killing him in the near future if he doesn't listen like the good little boy he is. I could feel him tense up. I then patted his head, a sign that I lied. I really do care about this boy. Too innocent for this cruel world we live in. My, then, would you like to have a walk with me? I'm sure your garden is very pretty this year. He smiled with his eyes, but he had a frown. And let them talk further. He paused. Without your friend. I looked down to Rowan, who was looking at me with the cutest little puppy dog eyes. Make sure to listen to them and learn from them, all right? He nodded. All right. Why don't we go now? I smiled to Tang, to which he nodded.